Mata with Mihingarangi Forbes is back up and running. I was speaking to some of the producers of Mata today, and when they release that mini doco they're working on around David Seymour, we will get some access to either them or, hopefully Mihi, but we'll see what happens. Mata is back though, and Mata is back is a good thing because she is an incredible interviewer, and she is one of these people who just sits and watches and waits and then asks the question that is devastating to whoever the other person is. They've just spent a couple of minutes in this conversation talking about the overrepresentation of Māori children in the negative stats around the school. They then go on to this part of the conversation, which is talking about why are Māori children underperforming or overrepresented in those stats. And this is the Minister of Education and part of that conversation.
What we do know is kura kaupapa Māori and Māori medium education consistently delivers better results. What are they doing that mainstream's not?
That's a really good point, and they do. If you look at the NCEA results, they're doing really well. And I dug into those results to make sure that actually, they are doing subjects that you would expect: English, maths, science. These are not being bumped up by unit standards. They're doing, credits in good subjects and getting really good results.
What do you reckon the secret is?
Well, there's a number of things. The kura kaupapa.
So this is important, in case it's not as clear here as it should be, but kura kaupapa Māori and Māori schools. And look, a bit later on, in a different clip I'm going to play, Mihi does say they are the gold standard, and they actually are. So if kura kaupapa and other Māori schools are actually doing better than the mainstream, why are we trying to bring Māori into the mainstream rather than the other way around? It's a little bit like, we have that conversation around they're inviting Māori to the table when we were talking about things like Three Waters, not understanding that the treaty, when it was signed, it was Māori inviting Europeans or the English to the table, and it's been flipped for some way. And I get the sense of this in this conversation. The Minister of Education is talking about helping Māori by bringing them into a non-Māori system, whereas the Māori system is actually outperforming the non-Māori system. It's a very strange merry-go-round they sit on for a while.
The movement has a really strong tie to families. And that's something I've been watching in the kura kaupapa movement, going, actually, there's probably something we need to learn here in the mainstream to make sure that we can implement some of those successful things that kura kaupapa do in the mainstream. We're not going to be able to mirror it exactly. They do have quite a different philosophy. And
let me tell you what Rawiri Wright says. He's a head of Te Rūranganui of Ngā Kura Kaupapa Māori. He says that introducing Mātauranga Māori worldview into mainstream schools will lift achievement for tauira Māori, and that's te reo Māori, tikanga, that's identity, that's history, and as you say, that's whānau as well. He's not alone. Your own website provides exactly the same analysis. So when you cancelled Te Ahu o Te Reo Māori, a Māori language training program for mainstream teachers, did you go against all your own evidence?
No, the evidence is really clear. Structured literacy and structured maths have incredible outcomes for Māori students. That's what the evidence tells us. You can go and talk to BSLA, you can go and talk to any of the schools who use Prime, Maths No Problem, or any of those
and
results.
You're fixing that, and you've reset it, and you're refreshing it, but you've also said that to me that it's not just a couple of drivers, it's multiple.
It is, but as a minister with limited resources, I have to make decisions.
Don't buy that. Ministers do not have limited resources. They have the resources set by Cabinet. They could double those resources tomorrow if they chose to.
Decisions.
So the decision is to remove millions of dollars of funding from teaching te reo Māori and putting it into...
Oh, bit of a pause there. We'll just do a little refresh here. My apologies, whānau. 8:53, we're going to have to come back to 8:53. All right, here we go. Just talk amongst yourselves. We'll just be a few minutes here.
With limited resources, I have to make decisions.
So the decision is to remove millions of dollars of funding from teaching te reo Māori and putting it into a mainstream maths refresh.
Well, in front of me I had evidence that said literacy and numeracy, outcomes for Māori, are extraordinary when we put resource into structured literacy and explicit teaching and maths and literacy. $30 million a year that was going into teaching te reo to mainstream teachers, the evidence that I was presented with and I've read shows that there were no tangible outcomes in raising achievement or closing the equity gap. I have got my eye on that. I want to close the equity gap and raise achievement of Māori students, and the way to do that...
You must know better than that. You must know that when you have mainstream teachers that can understand and represent and reflect tamariki Māori in mainstream schools, it's going to be beneficial. I read the report early this morning, the Independent Te Ahu Te Reo. There are so many great outcomes in there. One of them is, this is one that I just read, that the active teachers who participated, 83% of them in the survey reported that Te Ahu o Te Reo Māori had enhanced their professional practice in the schools.
They liked the free thing that they got. Yeah, look, I get that. But actually, where are the results?
What do you mean
results?
Free? What do you mean free? It's Te Reo Māori. No. It's an official language of this country. Why shouldn't we be teaching them this?
What I'm saying is that what you read this morning is all very well and nice, but what does it mean for student outcomes? It's not evidence of student outcomes. Where did it say in that document
it hasn't
that
had
you
an
read?
Opportunity to be
it's been going for a number of years.
And this is
I need
evidence.
Outcomes for Māori students.
So what about when Rawiri Wright tells you that what's important for Māori tamariki in mainstream schools, because he's worked in both and he's an expert in both, is identity, te reo and tikanga and whanaungatanga and all those kinds of things. You can't just have a curriculum and some resources. It's not working. It hasn't worked for 200 years.
Clip number one, Chewie. The idea of the Minister of Education going, duh, yeah, so they enjoyed the thing they got for free. When, to be clear, what she was talking about was the teachers teaching your kids, your brothers and sisters, your grandchildren, being trained in te reo Māori. And we're going to go on to it with the next clip, this idea of outcomes. And I'm not the kind of person that uses this sort of word, Chewie. Sometimes it feels a bit fluffy and thing, but the outcomes they are talking about are the outcomes of a colonizing race. And we get to that in the next clip, where the only outcomes they can see or grab onto are tangible ones. And I don't know about you at school, Chewie, but I remember at school some of the best outcomes, the best successes I had, were maybe not as tangible as a mark in a ledger, but it was to do with learning and growing. And, you know, it wasn't always the reading, writing and arithmetic. But this government seems to be heavily focused on that and seems to think it is the answer to everything, even though Kura Kaupapa Māori and other areas are saying, actually, this outperforms it and there's a lot more to this system than you guys are wanting to implement. Yeah, it's yours, sir.
I like how Erica has gone from saying some very nice sounding platitudes at the start of the interview to absolutely getting dog walked into a trap. And then you see her personality come out with that comment of like, oh yes, they like the free thing that they got. What a bitchy comment.
Yeah, totally. Real mean girls.
Like, would you say that about any other form of professional development that's provided for teachers?
Yeah.
Like it's bizarre. So yeah, it's funny when the mask slips. That's all I'm saying.
All right, we've got two other clips to play from Mata, but don't panic. I noticed out there Mata thought that he might be in trouble. No, you're not in trouble, Mata. I was just talking about the show they named after you. So this is I've got two more clips, but they're only like 90 seconds each. This clip is that idea of the outcomes, and what I've written down is tangible versus intangible. And when this government talks about outcomes, all they talk about is tangible outcomes, meaning something that you can put a mark in a ledger. And I just think, I'm not saying that those aren't important, right? But they're not the be all and end all. And what this government is basically doing and saying is they are the be all and end all. And I don't think that's how you get a well-rounded student myself.
There was $30 million that we were spending. It's not that we're going to not do it again, because I've already said publicly we're going to recontract. What you saw in those results was that teachers were doing up to a level that was, and it says in the report, they were doing it more for their personal enjoyment than it was actually useful in the classroom. That's the first thing. 60% of them weren't finishing the course. You had a whole lot of provision in areas of New Zealand where there are not high numbers of Māori. Yes,
It looked like 40 to me.
percent of,
Yeah.
no, it's 60% were not in the research that I've got. But there was a whole lot of provision in areas of New Zealand where there are not high numbers of Māori students. It was a very poor contract that wasn't outcomes focused. There was
Now, there's
no
a really
reporting
important part
on
here
outcomes.
that not to, there was a really high number, there was not a high number of Māori students in certain areas. So what she's actually saying, what she's literally saying is, why would we need to teach these teachers today if there's no Maori kids in their school? That's what she's saying. Because she's putting together the $30 million, my words, being wasted on teachers who are in an area where there's, quote, not a high number of Māori students. And it's like, you know the country you live in, eh? And you know the education system you're the minister of, eh? You got that all? You got that? And you know how it's not just Māori that benefit from learning about Māori things and to be able to pronounce Māori correctly and to be comfortable in the indigenous language of the country they live in, eh? But this is this tangible, intangible thing. This has got about 45 seconds to go. Do you want to say anything yet, Chewie? Should I push play?
No, let it roll.
When we recontract, I want to know, what are the outcomes for Māori students? I'm only putting resource in and holding myself to account so that I know that we are driving outcomes for Māori students in the mainstream, because
Tangible
I care about
outcomes.
closing the equity gap.
What does equity in education look like?
It means that when you come out as a student, doesn't matter if you're Māori or Pākehā or whatever, that you have the same opportunity to succeed. And I want to see, and I've seen it in schools. I've been up to schools in Northland who do structured maths and they've closed the gap. It means that they're Māori students. There's no difference between those students and the other students. I've been down in primary schools all around the country who say to me, Erica, within 2 years, our Māori students are reading at the same level as every other student. It's never happened before. Through structured literacy, structured maths, all of the resources of professional learning and development, those are results that I'm looking at and going, I want that in every single school in New Zealand. And that's why I have driven so hard to make sure that everything we're doing is about results, but not only in English medium, also in Te Reo Māori.
How do you...
And look, I think all of us, Chewie, would say if the reading is an improvement, that's amazing. Like it's great. It's good to see kids being able to read better. My concern is twofold. One is that's not the only outcome that we want to see from students in school. That's my first thing. And the second thing is, if you're the kind of kid who maybe that structure doesn't work quite so well, like lots of kids in the 80s and before were, then you fall through the cracks and you get left behind. Because there doesn't seem to be any conversation about, you know, the neurodiverse kids out there whose brain doesn't quite function like that. And if this is the only way and this is the only mark and this is the only channel, because that's the vibe I get from what she's saying. Chewie.
Pat, do you believe that in only 2 years she's leveled the playing field?
No.
Like, have we ever seen a turnaround in an educational program that quick?
No.
No.
But
It's not
in fairness, she's saying at our school, the reading level had increased. Could that be possible? Yeah.
Oh, she's talking about seeing changes from one end of the country to the other.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, of course. I don't have facts or figures. And I just find that really, like, we've talked about this when National brought in national standards. The proof of the pudding in that isn't like in 1 year or 2 years. It's in 10 to 15 years you see the results of the changes that you've made. And in education, like, I'm sure Erica's doing stuff here. Her minion, what's his name? Fellow with the pink tie. He's wanted to make some pretty dramatic changes to ECE teaching as well.
Rimmer.
So they're not even letting something bed in before they're trying to change something else as well that could have incredibly long-lasting effects on the education system.
Yeah. All right, we'll play the last clip now, and this references what I said right at the start. You heard in that very first clip that basically kia ora kaupapa is the gold standard. That's what they said, outperforming the mainstream. And this is the clip where Erica Stanford gets it the wrong way around. And you hear in this clip, and Mihi kind of talks to it, maybe corrects is the right word, that she is talking about including kia ora kaupapa in what they're wanting to do with the mainstream. And the question is, if kia ora kaupapa, if we all agree, is the gold standard, why aren't you including the mainstream with the kia ora kaupapa rather than including the kia ora kaupapa with the Māori, with the mainstream? You know, like, why are you going, oh, they can come and join us, where if they're doing it better, why don't we go and join them? It's this exact conversation again about who gets to invite to the table. When it came to the treaty, just remember, Māori were the ones who built the table from the forests they lived in and invited the settlers to come to their table. In 2025, probably because we think we're a bigger population and we can outnumber Māori, we've taken the table, and now we're saying to Māori, oh, you can come and join in with us if you want. It's got that vibe of conversation around it, and I've probably ruined the clip because I've basically explained it all away, but let's have a listen.
What I can say is that in the kia ora kaupapa movement, we know they're getting great results. We know they're doing a good job. I have made sure that the first thing I said was to my property department, because as you know, often the schools are substandard and the buildings are not up to scratch. I need them in network planning because there is a huge amount of demand that we are not meeting. Ensure that we are keeping an eye on the watch lists. We're working with Turanganui and Nakura a iwi. Make sure we know where the demand is and that we are meeting it as best we can. I want you to ring fence $100 million of property funding that we can continue to put into kia ora kaupapa. In fact, this morning I was announcing $100 million of extra money that we've managed to save through really good efficiencies we've found, and we included kia ora.
Sorry, just a side note, that's fucking terrifying. Government minister telling you, oh, we've just found another $100 million. We've ring-fenced it. Where did that get cut? Where did that get cut from? No, for another day. That's terrifying.
Kaupapa in that announcement this morning for kia ora kaupapa getting new classrooms. So
Well, it would make sense, right? Because they're gold star.
well,
So wouldn't it be the other way around, is that actually you should be looking into the mainstream that's not delivering for Māori tamariki and using the gold star practice as kia ora kaupapa? It feels like it's a little bit the wrong way around.
Yep.
I mean, and you're talking about Ngāti Hawa, you said you don't know much about it, but I mean, it's important for you to know because it's a treaty settlement. It's your government apologising for the wrongs and the grievances of the past and offering an apology on behalf of poorer educational outcomes. So when does the left talk to the right hand, I guess, in the Crown?
Well, we are delivering, huge amounts for kia ora kaupapa.
Yeah.
And that is a bespoke, incredible model.
And maybe that's an option for Ngāti Hawa then, a kia ora kaupapa.
Well, that's something that they can talk to, no doubt, Nakura a iwi or Te Ranganui or all of the other independent organisations about. But I want you to know that I am focused on making sure that they have the resources they need, they have the buildings that they need,
Totally.
and that they're at the table for discussions. And I believe I've got a really good relationship with kia ora kaupapa.
Yeah. I mean, so
There you go. So that's that conversation. Lovely to have Mihingarangi Forbes back on our show because legendary. But yeah, the whole point being, if this is the best way to do it, if this is getting the best outcomes, why aren't we modelling off them rather than them saying, well, they can come to the table. We make sure there's a space for them. No, let's go sit at their table. If they're doing it better and getting better outcomes, let's go sit at their table. Sheesh.
Isn't it hilarious? This isn't the only answer that they've got. Like, you'll have Seymour hold up charter schools as another answer, right? And it just turns out that the reason that charter schools are so good is that they get a fuckload more money per student.
That comes up in this
So
conversation.
maybe that's the answer. Is that kia ora kaupapa comes to the table with more answers, and we throw more money at the students to get better results.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a question like in the last 5 years, how many kia ora kaupapas have been built? And Erica said, I don't know. And Mihi said 2. and then started to talk about you've given X amount of $100 million to a French language school in Auckland. What about some more kura kaupapa schools? Because it's a charter school. You know, what about that? So that definitely is part of that conversation. We can't do it all. We can't watch it all. Go to RNZ and have a look at the whole conversation. It's really interesting all the way through. We can just give you a little sample.
I
and
mean,
you can go check it out for yourself.
Just as an aside, because I mean, we comment on the Jellyfish Man, Luxon, and his particular way of speaking and how empty and corporate Scrabble board it is. I think the danger with Erica is that she's a much better speaker. Definitely sounds a lot more like Sunshine and Lollipops. Lots more believable than Luxon.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, you know what I think?
No less factual.
I think she's the next leader. I think she's the next leader of the National Party myself, but that's just me.
I think she has been extremely cunning to make sure that a lot of the shit going on in National comes nowhere near her.
They talked about school lunches in there a little bit as well, and of course she palmed that off on Rimmer, even though it's her, it's your department, it's your ministry, but she's done well not to have any of that shit stick to her. She's done very well in that.